Welcome back. Let's learn how to implement via code asking to play an audio track as the background tune of our game. And for that, what I did is I have now a folder called music inside the assets folder, right? So assets, music, and I already have here populated. I have that Django that I created, that Django that I recorded with Andrew, Django.mp3. I recorded as an mp3. You will see why in a minute. So yeah, there we go. Sounding good. I have a couple of extra tunes right here. They were from a very, very famous producer called LTJ Bukem. So this is LTJ1, LTJ2, just normal Django tracks. So we can have a couple of extra options right now. And following that same idea of having a high pace sound appropriate for our racing game, right? There we go. I love this producer. Super, super cool. We have also LTJ2. Let's just take a look at it. Different BPM, but following the same idea, right? Right. So now that we have these 3 MP3 files, and they could as well be normal WAV files, right? Uncompressed WAV files. The reason why I'm using MP3 is because I want to change something right now, which is this. Do you remember how we were using in our build ISO? If we come here to our IDE, build ISO was using something called buildcd.exe that went there, created the IMG, and then we look at this cdlayout.cti. So we were using a cdlayout.cti using the CTI format that tells us how this ISO looks like, right? So we have all these properties, we have a track definition. This is our first XA track, right, with data. So we have a system configuration, we have the main.exe, all these things are encoded in the first track, and that's it. So far we only have one track, and then we have a lead out at the end. This ends our disk. And we were using this format CTI, right, which is almost like this text file with indentation to define how this track looks like, and all the files and the hierarchy and the subfolders and everything. What I'm going to do is, look, this CTI format and this build CD that we were using is not really optimal, and it has a lot of flaws. So I have decided to go, and I have also downloaded already, right here in my local disk scene, I downloaded this thing called MKPSX ISO, which is the ISO generator that we were using on a modern Windows machine. But it just happens that this MKPSX ISO also works with Windows XP. So I'm going to just decide I'm going to leave behind that CTI format and the build CD, those old tools, and I'm going to use this modern MKPSX ISO tool to generate my CD. That means that we're going to have an XML file, right? Instead of the CTI, we're going to have the XML file to tell the configuration of that ISO for us. Right, so now that I have the MKPSX ISO application right here, right? This MKPSX ISO is the application that I'm going to invoke to generate my ISO. And also, just for the sake of completeness, I came here in our control panel, system, and I added environment variables. So advanced, environment variables. Remember how we have the path of our system? In the path, I came here, I edited, and at the end, I added C:\MKPSX ISO as one of the folders of the path as well, besides all the other ones we had. All right, so now that we added this folder right here to the environment variables, this one right here, we can invoke that from our command prompt, which is, instead of using the CTI, I'm going to use a different format, which is that XML, and just to save everyone's time, I have already added right here the cdlayout.xml, which is just an XML version of what we already had as the CTI format. So this XML right here, let me just add here to our file. cdlayout.xml. This is the one we're going to use now with this MK-PSX-ISO tool. And this is how it looks. I already came here and populated. So it looks actually a lot tighter than the CTI format, right? So this is the old CTI, all this hierarchy and files, and this is the XML version. I have an XML which opens an ISO project with an image name game.iso. With the Q sheet, we're going to have a Q sheet called game.cuv that encodes and tells us all the tracks. So I'm going to have the first track, which is of the type data, right? So the first track of our CD is of the type data. Here are some of the identifiers that you can populate if you want. You can change these things if you want. I just copied from the example. I have the license. Remember how we have the license file that we need to encode? So it comes from this subfolder licensee.data. And then we have now the directory tree for the first track. And that is a file called system configuration that is the type data and the source is system.txt. We have the main.exe of the type data, which is main.exe. And then all ship.prm comes from assets common all ship. All ship CMP comes from assets common all ship. You get the idea, right? And also, as we start and we open a new directory called track2, inside this new directory, I have all these different files. Library, ttf, scene.cmp, scenes.prm, track vertices, track faces, track sections, and then we end the directory. And we have a dummy sectors here, 1024 sectors as a dummy at the end. As we end this track, look at what I have. I have 3 different audio tracks. Remember, now they are not data, they are of the type audio. These are normal Redbook audio files. And the source, I am just telling you that the source is MP3. Cool, and then you end this project. This is going to be now the new ISO project that we want. Actually, I have just noticed that I think I forgot to add those VAG files that I had right here. So I'm going to have 3 more files, right? Because if you compare here to the CD layout CTI that we had, I think we have added some extra files right here. Power up VAG, count 1, count 2, count 3, and count 0. I'm just going to go and add them to the XML as well. So I need something called powerup.vag that comes from assets sound power up VAG, and then we're gonna have all the other VAG files. We have count1 VAG that comes from count1, and we have count2 and count3 and count go. Count 2, count 3, and count go. Count 2, count 3, and count go. I think that's it. All of these are VAG files, right? So don't forget to add this one right here. I'm going to provide this XML to you. You don't have to worry about that. Right, so now we have a CD layout.xml. We have to just change the way that we build our CD. So instead of in the build ISO.batch, instead of using this build CD and generate everything, now all of these things are going to be replaced. I can say echo compile and generate an executable, fine. I can still ask to scimake, but now whenever we are building our ISO file, all I have to say is invoke mkpsx-iso from the path, right? The environment variables path that we have is going to go invoke this mkpsx-iso.exe, and we have to pass cd layout.xml, which is what it expects. And that is it. We don't need to convert anything. We don't need to bundle the PSX license because the MK-PSX-ISO does everything for us. And that should be it. So scimake, as soon as we have main.exe, we go and we MK-PSX-ISO based on the CD layout XML, which is this thing that we just populated right here. Right? So we have, again, I'm going to stress this again. We have first track, which is data, and then the second, third, and fourth track are audio tracks, right? Redbook audio tracks. Very well, let's see if that works. So let's just see if we can generate this ISO and the Q file that we're going to use. So we have all these files. I should be able to say build ISO.batch, and this should generate using mkpsx ISO. Compiling everything, SciMake, good, and then building ISO. It says ISO image already exists. Do you want to overwrite? Yes. Oops, I think I made a mistake. So it was packing everything. Right here, it just made a mistake. It says audio, music, Django, MP3 not found. Correct. So, well, the first thing that I want to do is, right here, I just want to add a -y. So it always forces us to overwrite, right? It always confirms with a yes, so we don't have to press yes all the time. And right here in my XML, I think I made a mistake. It is inside assets, music, correct? Good thing that we got that. Let's just try this again. Build ISO, SciMake, we will compile everything, generate our ISO, and look at that. It built everything, all the file system, added all these files, and then track 2 is an audio track packing. It went there, Django.mp3, it packed as raw data, done. Track 3 audio, packed everything as raw, done, and track 4 audio, LTJ2, packed as raw, done. So we have track 2, 3, and 4 as raw data. Great stuff. Everything looks good. We are generating our ISO. Everything is encoded. There are these tracks there. And one super important thing that I want to point out is we also generate something super important in our C. WIPO. We have now something called game.q sheet, right? So instead of having just the IMG, the ISO, now we have something called game.q. Q is basically, let me just add this Q right here. The Q sheet is a text file that tells us what are the tracks that are encoded in our game. So this is a file, a text file that says, look, I have a file game.iso, which is a binary that has 3 tracks inside. I have one track, which is of the mode 2, right? So this is all CD encoding jargon, right? Mode 2, 2352, index 1 starts at 00, and then I have also track 2, which is an audio, which has a pre-gap 00200, index 1, and then I have a track 3 audio with this index, and then I have a track 4 audio with this index and this index. So all these things that you're seeing right here, this is super important. We are going to use this Q sheet right here in our emulator to go and play our game, because it knows everything that has to be known about the CD, right? It has a game.iso, which is of the type binary, which is track 1, and then track 2, track 3, and track 4. Got it? This is super important. Now we have, besides having the game.iso, now we have a game.q, this Q sheet with this information about our CD. Very well. In the next lecture, let's just glue all this knowledge together, and let's just learn via code how to go and invoke and say, PlayStation, I want to play track 2, or I want to play track 3, and so forth.